Video games are expensive. They're expensive to buy, but they're also expensive to make. You've got thousands of work hours, a bunch of dollars into marketing, and then you've got to pay to maintain all those servers and update glitches when needed. And so, like films before them, game developers turn to product placement. The Converse-wearing, Reese's Pieces sharing, FedEx box tearing advertising tactic that makes me remember which brand of soda is the taste of a new generation. It's Pepsi. Important side note before we get started, this doesn't include what Wikipedia likes to call advert games, where corporations like Purina and Burger King will develop whole games using their mascots for their companies and tape them to the side of cereal boxes or ship them to you if you give them enough coupons. While I do think that almost 100% of the time they're low-effort games that were also the top seller in holiday 2006, they don't feature product placement, they are the product placement. And in a weird way, these companies are developing games to increase brand recognition, which sounds dangerously similar to movie tie-ins, Ford Racing Off-Road, and any other game that's a result of, brand synergy, and I really just don't want to unpack all of that. For the most part, I'm talking about games that feature real-world brands as a part of their world. Product placement is huge in sports games, but that's in part to it being part of that culture. Immersion isn't broken when there's advertisements on the fence or on the court, especially since a lot of those games are supposed to emulate, real-world broadcasts of these events. Also, can you even imagine, an NFL football game without real-world advertisement? It'd be kinda spooky and hollow. It'd just be John Madden's voice, seductively shouting in your ear and everyone not knowing what brand of beer they should buy. Also, I'd feel a little ripped off if I was at, a major sporting event and I wasn't surrounded by Gatorade ads. That being said though, in-game and on-the-court ads are one thing, unskippable ads for an FX TV show in 2K19 is another. When a game's advertisement doesn't A, fit into the world, or B, impedes a player's ability to, actually play the game, it becomes a bit of a problem. It seems a bit greedy, and in a time where people actively avoid being advertised to, it feels like it's there to intentionally piss people off. You don't annoy people into buying your product or watching your show. Also, that sort of culture bleeds into sports games of the motor variety as well. Not only are there huge billboards on the sides of racetracks for tires and whatnot, but cars typically equates to status, and having a nice expensive car means you're a nice expensive guy that the ladies want to buy. And so Gran Turismo and other more traditional racing games are intended to make you feel like you're in an episode of Top Gear by giving you cars and parts and brands you recognize. So again, this is fairly acceptable. The British one. I meant the British Top Gear, or I guess the Grand Tour now, on Amazon Prime. Use my Amazon affiliate link in the description for a free 6 months of Prime. And coming with luxury car racers comes luxury watches, because something tells me that the Venn diagram of people who enjoy luxury cars and can afford to buy them are the same people who enjoy luxury watches as well. But that is dangerously close to breaking immersion, especially in games like Gran Turismo Sport, which is part of a series that's been drastically downgrading in everything but technical prowess with every subsequent release. They were apparently so strapped for cash or so inspired by Tag Heuer's glorious watches that they felt the need to create something called Brand Central, which is mostly car related but would actually open the PS4 browser and connect players to real-world companies as well. That's pretty damn weird. But car product placement isn't limited to these cold, sterile simulators. On the complete opposite side of the racing game spectrum exists perhaps the strangest example I can think of. Like Wakanda before it, the elusive monarchist Mushroom Kingdom has finally opened its gates to outside trading, and the very first car manufacturer it found was Mercedes-Benz. That's right, when I school my friends on Baby Park, I be sure to do it behind the wheel of a Mercedes-Benz GLA. For real though, of all the product placement that we've talked about so far, this is one that I actually avoid like the plague. Something about it breaks immersion for me in a really weird way. See, to me, Mario is a lot like Star Wars. It represents the pinnacle of game design, it changed the medium forever, and both exist in a world that's so stylized that it feels separate from contemporary society in a way that other games/movies aren't. And so if one day there was product placement in Star Wars like Han Solo drinking a Heineken or the Millennium Falcon having a Hemi in it, it just shattered the whole illusion of space wizards versus space Nazis for me. But beyond kart racers and sim racers, tuner culture reeks of product placement. I don't know if any of you remember or if my childhood existed in a strange echo chamber, but the early 2000s was swamped in street racing. The Fast and the Furious, Super Street Magazine, and most importantly, the Need for Speed Underground games. If Saturday Night made a sound, it would be the Snoop Dogg remix of Riders on the Storm.
Going off of this, going off of that. With the Lizard King bumping in the back. How about that?
And while tuner culture was at its peak, cell phone culture was right alongside it. Right on the cusp of smartphones, cell phone companies were just small enough to start to tap into counterculture. And when you're cruising the streets of Bayview, you can bet your ass you could only trust Singular to give you calls about the latest events and unlockables. Man, this is some serious prime real estate in a game developed by EA before EA was terrible. At any given moment, this little orange guy is hovering on the screen like the Vitruvian Man, just waiting for me to get a call or a notification. And like a couple years later, Midnight Club LA would do almost the exact same thing with the T-Mobile Sidekick. I mean, I'm not saying that games should avoid contemporary real-world technology, but damn, this makes these games look really dated. Tuner culture was to me, a suburban kid who liked 50 Cent, peak, you can't tell me what to do, mom attitude. And seeing these real-world companies going, you tell her, kid, by encouraging me to steal her car and do donuts in a Burger King parking lot, well, shit. Even to this day, I know Singular ain't no narc.
Swear on your mother's grave, you're still not a cop! I am not a fucking cop!
Companies can be cool, apparently. I mean, hell, Crazy Taxi is punk as shit. And Pizza Hut, the peak of 90s excess, had to be there. And fellow Yum Corp-owned KFC along with it was just icing on the cake. And Enter the Matrix had to, of course, include Powerade ads, the drink of the people. And like even the master of counterculture, Sonic the Hedgehog had product placement with soap shoes, which was like a pair of shoes that made it easy to grind on rails. I don't really understand and I can't really find any to buy. Apparently that's where Sonic got that from. And these days that feels as integral to Sonic as like those bounce thingies. And at one point Barack Obama had an ad in Burnout Paradise. Politics aside, that seems fairly in line with what he was going for at that time. Do you want Grampy McCain or young guy Barry who listens to Avril Lavigne and does sick flat spins in his Nakamura SI7? I mean, I guess that's barely a product and barely a statement that makes sense, but Obama, Pizza Hut, and T-Mobile all want to capture the minds of teenagers and the youth to either beg their parents to buy the products or capitalize on the newly independent voters/customers who are just old enough to ride their bikes to a Pizza Hut or their local polling place. What we can see here is that brands essentially infiltrate punk rock niche areas of popular culture to tap into the youth consumer. I mean, just look at all the games in the Tony Hawk series. They're chock full of dozens of branding, which feels so ironic. But at the same time, I owned an Element shirt because that's what Mike V wore. Could I do an ollie? Hell no. Also, one guy says Skittles in the first Tony Hawk Underground, and to this day, I don't know if that's product placement or not, but it's really late in the game and I'm too lazy to get footage of it. Sue me. Don't think that this is limited to racing and sports games either. Homefront, that weird Red Dawn-inspired game from last generation, was bursting with advertisements for fast food restaurants and energy drinks, and while they did say it was to make the game feel more realistic, THQ was absolutely hemorrhaging money at this time, as the licensed game empire they had built was crumbling underneath them. I mean, to be fair, the most capitalist thing I've ever heard is shooting communists out of the front of Hooters, but that's neither here nor there. Also, the Metal Gear Solid series has included real-world products on numerous occasions, with not only the Triumph motorcycles and iPods, but also Doritos, Axe body spray, and Playboy magazine. What are 3 things you found under my dad's bed?
Right.
Snake Eater also features product placement for something called Calorie Mate, which is like a nutritional supplement that's only available in Japan. I actually managed to find one on Amazon for $8, so here's me trying it.
It's like a weird Pop-Tart. Like an apple cinnamon Pop-Tart.
Also, here's a picture of Nathan Drake holding a Subway sandwich, for no reason. But you're sitting there like, yeah, but what does this mean? I'm not being hypercritical of the capitalist institutions like you expected. I'm mostly just pointing out the various products and various games. Well, part of me kind of likes them being there because they fill out the world. I've played in a lot of bands in my day, and we'd often talk about various strings and guitar bodies and their various merits. And so having real guitars and real strings in games like Guitar Hero and Rock Band feels accurate to the environment it's trying to depict, even if it's only limited to a handful of brands. But at the same time, I get that brands actively seek out the next hipster thing that's up and coming and market it to the ever-elusive youth customer base. And so it's no coincidence that the product placement I remember most vividly is from games from my childhood and ones that depict some form of counterculture movement. It feels tad shitty and elusive, and you should know that eventually every punk rock anti-establishment environment is destined to get ads infesting it from the inside. And you, as the responsible media consumer / plain old consumer that you are, should make informed decisions about the products you buy. And don't buy shit because you think that corporations actually like you. And that's coming from a guy wearing 3 pieces of Vans apparel as he says this. I mean, hey, that's a pretty surface level analysis that paints corporations at worst as leeches on genuine anti-establishment movements, and at best paints them as Steve Buscemi holding a skateboard. I don't know. Buy shit you want to buy, not shit people tell you to buy. And when you do buy things, do it through our Amazon affiliate link, because Jeff Bezos' bald head won't polish itself. Hey, thank you so much for watching. Dakota and I have been talking about doing a video about this for a while, and so there was tons of ground to cover. If you like what you heard, you should give this video about gambling mechanics in video games a watch as well.